was born to do. It's important for you to understand that your experience facing and overcoming adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages. Everybody wants to fulfill the highest, truest.
Hey, you beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of the Shift and Uplift podcast. Here on this podcast, we dive deep into the real, the raw, and the often messy parts of our life. I'm your host, the Jacques Allen, and today we're tackling a topic that's as old as time, but yet so relevant as ever. The thin line between love and hate. We've all heard the saying, there's a thin line between love and hate, and probably seen the movie. But today we're going to explore why that thin line exists and why it's so easy to cross. We've all heard the saying that there's a thin line between love and hate, and probably seen the movie. And we're going to explore why that thin line even exists, why it's so easy to cross, and what you can do when you find yourself on the darker side of love. We're diving deep into the psychological triggers, the signs of a love and hate relationship, and of course, some heartfelt advice for those of you who may be struggling with those intense, overly emotional, crazy, roller coaster emotions. Get comfortable, and you maybe need to grab a journal and a warm cup of tea or joe because this is going to be a long one. And let's go ahead and break this down together. Now, if you know me, then you know that I'm a hopeless romantic at heart. I genuinely believe in that forever kind of love. The kind of love that you see in movies. The kind of love that makes your heart skip a beat. And the kind of love that gives you butterflies. The love that feels like home, safe and warm. The kind that fills every corner of your soul. It's not just a fleeting feeling for me. It's a belief. It's a part of who I am. But, and this is the part that a lot of people don't talk about, when you love that deeply, there's a risk that comes with it. You're putting your heart on the line and putting your heart out there, completely vulnerable, knowing that sometimes love doesn't last. Sometimes it fades or it comes crashing down and you're left wondering if you were ever enough, if you did something wrong, or if you'll ever find love again. And let me tell you, I've been there weekly, might I add, because the mind of a maniac over here. I've given so much of myself to relationships, whether it was romantic friendships or even family, that sometimes I look back and realize that I had lost sight of who I was in the process. I've loved so deeply and so fiercely that when those relationships shifted or ended, it felt like a part of me disappeared with them. It's a gut-wrenching feeling, and I know I can't be alone in this. We've all been there, right? Wondering if we were enough or if we gave too much. But here's what I've learned over the years, and it's okay because you're not defined by how others treat you. You are not measured by someone else's ability to see your worth. Your value is inherent and it comes from within. It can never be shaken by the actions or opinions of others. And that's the message I want to share with you today. Love in all its forms. It's beautiful. But we can also admit that it can be a bit of a battleground. I've had my heart shattered more times than I can count. And a lot of times it was my own fault, to be quite honest. But even though I've questioned everything I believed in, I've had my faith tested in love, and I felt like I was standing at the edge of the cliff, unsure of what to do and what to hold on to. I'm still here. I'm still a hopeless romantic, still believing in deep forever love. Why? Because I've learned how to protect my heart without shutting it down. The thing is, loving deeply doesn't mean losing yourself in the process. Love isn't about becoming someone else or shrinking yourself to fit someone else's needs. True love, the kind of love that I believe in, is about two whole people coming together, each bringing their own worth and their own value to the table, creating something even more magical and more beautiful together. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes we need to draw boundaries to protect ourselves, to know our worth, and to stop letting people cross lines that we've set. This isn't about building walls around your heart or shutting yourself off from the world, which I might add that I'm completely guilty of. It's just about being honest with yourself, knowing what you will and won't tolerate, setting those non-negotiables, the things that are so important to you that you'll stand firm on no matter what. If you don't protect your heart, if you keep giving more than you receive, you'll lose yourself. You'll eventually forget who you are, what you stand for, and what you need. And that loss, the loss of your true self, is far greater than the end of any relationship. Think back to a time when you gave up so much of yourself to protect someone that you lost yourself. Maybe you let someone disrespect your feelings, or you ignored a red flag because you were afraid of losing them. I've been there. And I know that feeling of emptiness when you give and give, but it's never enough for the other person for whatever reason. But what if instead of letting that happen, you'd drawn a boundary? What if you'd said, this isn't okay, and I'm not going to allow it anymore? It's hard, right? It's painful and can be lonely. But let me tell you, you are worthy of love that honors you, that sees you for who you are, and the love that doesn't ask you to sacrifice yourself to fit someone else's mold. So I want to ask you something today. What are your boundaries? What are the things that are non-negotiable in your relationships? Are you honoring them, or are you letting them go because of fear or guilt, just to keep your person around? And do you stand up for yourself? Because, my friend, when you honor your own boundaries, when you say no to the things that don't serve you, you're saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to your joy, your peace, and your worth. This isn't about being hard or closed off. It's about being open to the right kind of love. It's about knowing that when you are true to yourself, the people who are meant to be in your life will love you for exactly who you are, not for who they want you to be. And that, my friend, is the kind of love that we all deserve. The kind of love that doesn't require us to shrink ourselves, to dim our light, but instead, it allows us to celebrate us exactly the way we are. So whether you're in a journey, been healing from a heartbreak, or just learning to love yourself more, I want you to know through this process, you are enough. You have always been enough. And the love you seek is already within you. We're going to dive into some things about thin line between love and hate. But through this podcast, just remember to keep your heart open and protect it. set your boundaries, know your worth, and watch how the right kind of love is going to flow into your life. Now, again, let's spin to this and break this down, how we can find that balance between loving deeply and protecting ourselves, and learning when that thin line between love and hate is getting pretty close, because you deserve the love that uplifts you and not brings you down. And we're going to explore, what does that even look like? Now, let's start with the basics. Love and hate. It's more connected than most people think. They really aren't true opposites. They're actually deeply related. Both are super passionate, emotional responses that can take over your mind and your heart. And when you're madly in love, you're vulnerable and you're open and you're giving. But when love goes wrong, that vulnerability, it can easily twist into that defensiveness and that resentment and, yes, that hate. According to psychology, y'all know that's my thing, love and hate are two sides of the same coin because they are both engaged in the same regions of the brain. That's why someone you love, someone you once adored, can suddenly become the person who pisses you off the most. Have you ever noticed that the people who hurt us the most are often the ones that we love the hardest? There's a reason for that. Betrayal, neglect, disappointment, all of that can turn a relationship that once felt like a fairy tale into a nightmare. This isn't just poetic fluff. It's backed by science. And neuroscience have totally discovered that when we're in love, our brain releases dopamine, that feel-good hormone that lights up our brain. It's kind of like our reward center. But when love turns to hate, those same pathways can be activated, except instead of getting the feeling of pleasure, it's anger and frustration that starts to take over. Let's talk about boundaries for a moment. How many of you have had someone cross a line, and instead of speaking up, you let it all slide because you were afraid of losing them? Maybe it was a partner who disrespected you, or a friend who took more than they gave, or even a family member who didn't honor your feelings. We've all been there, afraid that if we speak our truth, we'll push someone away. So we kept quiet. We minimized our needs and we adjusted and we stayed silent, hoping that things will get better. But here's the reality. If you don't set boundaries, then you're teaching people how to treat you. You're telling them that it's okay to take without giving, and it's okay to cross lines, and that your needs don't matter. And let me tell you, they do matter. Your needs are valid, and you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. The kind, genuine, soft love. And that goes for all relationships, not just romantic ones. Friendships, family, coworkers. Every relationship in your life should be one that honors who you are. If you're constantly giving and not receiving, if you're constantly compromising and never feeling seen, it's time to take a step back and ask yourself, is this relationship truly serving me? Now, let me share something I wish I have learned early in my process. Protecting your heart doesn't mean closing it off. It doesn't mean building up walls so high to where no one can get in. It's about opening your heart to the right kind of love, the love that honors your boundaries and respects your needs, and the one that celebrates who you are. It's about knowing when you love yourself truly and deeply, you won't tolerate anything less than the love that you deserve. I want you to imagine a version of yourself that isn't afraid to set boundaries, a version of you that loves fiercely, but also values yourself enough to say, this isn't okay. I deserve better. That version of you exists, and you have every right to be that person, because here's the truth. You are worthy of the kind of love that doesn't hurt, the kind that doesn't take away from who you are, but instead it adds on. So how do we get there? We find a balance between loving fully and protecting our heart. It starts with knowing what you need and what you want and what you deserve. It starts with acknowledging that it's okay to say no and to walk away if you choose. It starts with knowing that it's okay to choose yourself first. Think back to another time when you allowed someone to cross a boundary because you didn't want to lose them. Do you remember how that made you feel? Probably empty and hurt, and disappointed. Now, imagine if you would have just stood up for yourself. Imagine if you would have said, this isn't okay. It wouldn't have been hard. It may have felt a little lonely, but in that moment only. You would have been showing yourself the love that you were searching for in someone else. The greatest act of love that you can give yourself is the permission to be unapologetically you. It's the courage to set boundaries, to walk away from what isn't right, and to hold out for the love that truly honors you. Now, I do want to shift gears a little and talk about the power of vulnerability. Loving deeply means being vulnerable. It means showing up as your authentic self, even when it's scary and even when it means that you may get hurt. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's a strength. It's my superpower. It's the ability to say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And if someone chooses to leave, that's okay. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's simply an indication that they wasn't right for you. I've had a lot of moments in my life when I've been completely vulnerable, too vulnerable to some, when I've laid my heart on the line and I've been rejected or hurt or disappointed, but I don't regret those moments because being vulnerable, while I was being vulnerable, I was true to who I was, true to myself. And I was honest about my feelings, my desires, and my needs. And even if it didn't work out, I was still so proud of myself for being myself and showing up authentically. So if you're listening to this right now and you've been holding back, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to show the world who you really are, this is your permission to let go of that fear. Be vulnerable and be open and be honest, because being that for the right person, they will appreciate you for who you are, and they will see you, and they will love you for who you are. As we move forward in this conversation, I want to make it clear that love is not about perfection. It's not about finding someone who checks every box, or it's not about having a relationship that's free of challenges. It's about finding someone who's willing to do the work with you, who's willing to show up with you, communicate with you, and grow together. It's about building something that's real. Even if it's not always perfect, it can be perfect for you guys. I want to speak to those of you who kind of maybe feeling a little clouded or jaded or guarded. Maybe if you've been hurt one too many times and you're wondering if it's even worth it to open up your heart again. And let me tell you, it is. Love is always worth it. But this time, do it differently. This time, go in with your eyes wide open, with your heart protected and your boundaries, and go in it with a clear mindset. Now, when it comes love to hate, woo-hoo child. This is some of the main reasons I feel that love turns to hate. If you're nodding along with any of these, then guess what? You're not alone. Betrayal. This is the ultimate relationship killer. Whether it's infidelity and cheating, broken promises, or even a breach of trust, betrayal shatters the safety net of a relationship. The person who once made you feel safe now feels like a threat. And that's when love can turn to rage. Betrayal is not just about what the other person did. It's about how their actions violated who you are and your sense of safety and your sense of worth. Neglect. Love needs nurturing, just like a plant. When one person or one partner feels ignored or undervalued, that sense of being neglected can slowly fester into resentment. You can start to hate them. And it may start with small things like missed date nights or maybe they forgot the anniversary. But over time, neglect feels like an emotional abandonment, and it leads to a love that becomes sour. Incompatibility. Oh, jeez, this word makes my butt itch. At the beginning of a relationship, we often overlook the differences because we're so caught up in the thrill of love. But over time, those tiny differences, it can grow into major incompatibilities. Maybe the person that you're with, your partner, their values or habits or lifestyle choices don't align with yours. And suddenly you're looking at the person that you love, wondering, how did you ever make this work in the first place? All I'm going to say is been there, done that. I'm going to leave that at that. Conflict, unresolved conflict. Conflict is normal. Avoiding conflict is a recipe for disaster. Letting issues go unresolved, it doesn't make them disappear. It just pushes them to the back of your mind where they're going to turn into a ticking freaking time bomb. One moment you're holding back to keep the peace, and the next you're blowing up over the smallest thing, because it's never really about one small thing, is it? Now, how do you know if you're in a love-hate relationship? How can you tell? Here's some signs I would say to watch out for. Extreme highs and lows. One minute you're completely head over heels, and the next you're in a screaming match over the tiniest disagreement. This kind of emotion whiplash is a super huge red flag. Jealousy and possessiveness. There's a fine line between being protective and being possessive. If you or your partner are overly jealous, it may be because deep down, there's a fear of betrayal or loss of control. On and off again patterns? Yee. Breaking up and getting back together multiple times isn't a sign of a healthy, resilient relationship. It's a sign that something fundamental is not working. And if you're doing it, you're one of those people. That's not normal. Control your emotions. Mixed feelings. You don't know if you want to stay or you want to go. You may feel relieved when they're not around, but you also miss them intensely when they're gone. This is the kind of emotion that's emotionally exhausting, and it's a sign that you're in a love-hate dynamic. Now, when it comes to tips for those people who actually want to stay until you hate them, and let me elaborate on that. Some people believe that you stay until you hate them, so you won't do it anymore and you won't circle back. For whatever reason, you don't know how long that's going to take. So it could take a month, it could take a year, it could take 3 years before you hate them. But hey, I'm not judging. So if you are one of those people who wants to stay until the love fade, if you find yourself in a love-hate relationship, at least for now, here are some strategies that I would suggest if this is your route to help you navigate this storm. Clear communication. The first step to solving any issue is to talk about it. Set boundaries for what's okay and what's not, and be clear about how certain actions may make you feel. Don't let resentment build because you're too afraid to speak up. Practice empathy. Try to put yourself in your partner's shoes. Why may they be acting this way? What's the reason behind some of their actions? And sometimes understanding the why, it can soften the impact a little of what's going on and what's happening. Choose your battles. Not every single issue needs to turn into confrontation. Pick what really matters to you and let the small stuff go. If every disagreement turns into a fight, it's going to explode what's left of the love you have. And seek therapy. Couples therapy isn't just for those who are on the brink of divorce. Sometimes a therapist really can help both of you and help both of you see the relationship more clearly and offer tools to improve it. Don't wait until things are at their worst to get help. Now, for those of you who are a passionate lover and want to keep the peace and you want to leave before love turns to hate, here are my 4 steps that I would say to do. Okay? Plan your exit. Child, plan your exit. Think about what leaving would look like. Are you financially there, emotionally ready, and practically, genuinely? Are you really, truly, honestly ready to walk away? Have a plan that can make the decision feel less overwhelming. Number 2, focus on self-care. Leaving a relationship, even if it's for the best, is hard. Let's be real. It's super hard. Make sure you're taking care of yourself during this time and surround yourself with strong support network of friends and family or just people who genuinely uplift you. Find your peace. Number 3, don't engage in the blame game. It's too easy to point fingers and blame your partner for everything that went wrong. But that's not going to help you guys move forward. Seek closure, not revenge. Ending a relationship with bitterness, it only poisons you in the end. Seeking closure and finding peace and knowing that you're choosing the right path, it's always a healthier choice for you. Now, when it comes to the science of moving on, it's hard. And let's see why it's so hard. When you love someone so deeply, it's so hard to let go. Even when you know it's not the right thing to do, our brains become chemically attached to the person that we love or we think we love, creating what's known as an attachment bond. The pain you feel during a breakup, it isn't just emotional. It's physical too, because your brain goes into a withdrawal, much like an addiction. But here's the thing. Just like any other addiction, it gets easier over time. You create new habits, find new joys, and begin to rediscover yourself outside of that relationship. The key is to allow yourself the space to grieve, to heal, and to grow. Now, the final thoughts on love and hate. As we wrap up this intense conversation, remember this. Love is beautiful. Love is messy. And love is sometimes painful. It can lift you to the highest of the highs, and it can also drag you to the lowest of the lows. If you're in a space where love has turned to hate, be kind to yourself. Know that you have the power to choose, to stay, to fight, or to walk away with your dignity intact. At the end of the day, you deserve to be in a relationship that makes you feel safe and valued and loved. And if you're struggling to find that balance, it's okay to seek help and to set boundaries and prioritize your own happiness. I hope this episode gave you a lot of insight and a bit of comfort. If you're in the middle of this love-hate dynamic, if you got your own story to share, or if you've been looking for some advice, feel free to reach out. Follow us on Shift and Uplift on all social medias. And of course, the Jacques Allen, TheJacqueAllen. I would love to hear from you guys. Until next time, keep shining, stay uplifted, and always choose yourself first. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who you feel may need to hear it. And if you super love me, please leave a review. We need reviews. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Sending you love. Bye.